don't judge people that you don't know. Like, you don't know whether it's the driver of a taxi, whether it's an unhoused person on the street, anyone that you cross paths with. You have no idea what their story is. You have no idea what they've been through. They could be this amazing, talented person like you know?
Welcome to Bitch Talk. I'm your host, Erin.
And I'm co-host Ange, aka Captain Party.
And for more than 11 years, the show has celebrated underrepresented voices in pop culture and beyond.
But not in the snore kind of way, which is why our listeners and followers have graciously voted us Best of the Bay, Best Podcast on 48 Hills for 3 years in a row. Three-peat, bitches.
If you like what you hear, follow us on Instagram and check out our website, Bitch Talk Podcast, and rate us wherever you listen to podcasts.
We're begging you to judge us. When does that ever happen? Oh, you're not going to say anything?
Oh, what'd I say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, on that note, on with the show. Clink.
All right, Bitch Talkers, we are talking about the film Goodbye Horses, The Many Lives of Q Lazzarus. And I'm going to have the filmmaker introduce themselves and the film to our audience.
My name's Eva Reed Fuentes. I'm the director of Goodbye Horses, The Many Lives of Q Lazzarus. So the film is about Diane Lucky, also known as Q Lazzarus or simply Q, who was making music in New York in the 80s and also driving a yellow cab. And she wrote this song, Goodbye Horses, with her friend Bill Garvey. And Jonathan Demme got into her taxi one night, and she played the song for him. And he put it in Married to the Mob and Silence of the Lambs in the Buffalo Bill scene, which is very famous. And he also put her in Philadelphia. She had a cameo singing at a party scene there. But she never really got any attention. She didn't get a record deal ever. She was also in the UK for many years with a rock band there. And then shortly after Philadelphia in the mid-90s, she completely vanished for 25 years. Not even her bandmates and best friend knew what had happened to her. And I was a fan of the song and knew a little bit about her. And in 2019, I got into a car service that she was driving and kind of recognized her and had the very good fortune of being entrusted with her remarkable, amazing story. And we worked together for 3 years making this film. And it's really about her whole story, from her childhood and her 10 years making music in New York and London to why she disappeared and then what she was doing, when I met her.
Yeah, everything from the way you met her to the timing of when you met her, sort of the chapter in her life that she was in when you met her. Mm-hmm. This film is so much bigger than just a really great film, which it is. But you helped Q Lazzarus sort of achieve her redemption. It's just like all the signs are pointing towards you are the person to make this film in this moment. So can you talk about the serendipity of it all and just there aren't any certainties in life, but with all these things happening, you're like, I'm certain that I'm going to do this film.
So yeah, I used to be a DJ and I'd play the song and I had wondered what had happened to her, and I'd actually had a conversation with a friend one night at a bar when Goodbye Horses was playing, where we were talking about her, and he said, you should do a film about her. And I said, well, I'd love to, but how do I find her? Like, she's been missing. People have been trying to find her. And then probably about a year later, I got into her car, and there were several clues which made me suspect it was her. The first one is there had been an article in Dazed and Confused earlier in 2019 where the writer said, there's a Diane Lucky listed in Staten Island, listed as living in Staten Island. I'm going to go there and see if it's her. And they knocked on the door and they were told that she didn't live there. She did, but she didn't want to be found. And that was sort of the extent of the article. But cut back to a few months later when I got in her car, her GPS was working and she went completely the wrong way and, sort of told me, oh, sorry, the thing is I live in Staten Island. I don't really know my way around Brooklyn. So that was a big clue. Also, she had a whole CD collection, and which let me know that she cared about music. And, obviously she was the right age. I knew she'd been a taxi driver in the 80s, so it wasn't inconceivable that she'd gone back to driving cars. And we just really hit it off. We were like singing Neil Young together. She was playing Harvest in her car. And I think she trusted me because I recognized her, but I wasn't looking for her, and she told me the fact we were both mothers also made her trust me. And it was also a timing thing. Her son was about to graduate from college. So she said, why can't I go back to my music? And she'd also had a dream that she was performing, which she hadn't had in 15 years. So there were a lot of things that she was also a very spiritual woman, but that made us feel that this was fated, for both of us. And obviously, she'd picked up Jonathan Demme, the first person to sort of discover her and the only one to really give her opportunities until now was another filmmaker that she picked up in her car by chance. So I think she knew that, to pay attention to those things.
We definitely talked to a lot of documentarians, documentary filmmakers, and I hope when people listen to this and listen to our conversations, they're understanding that you have to have, well, you don't have to, but a good documentary filmmaker has to have a really good and honest and caring relationship with whoever they're filming. And I felt that throughout this film. Like she really loved you. And I feel like you had the same regard for Q. But I want you to talk about digging in to this story and digging in with her and her family and being there kind of in her day to day. Can you talk about that kind of filming? Oh, hello,
Yeah.
puppy.
Oh, fur
I thought that was a
this
dog.
this bitch has something to say about it too.
Oh, well, don't they
Oh,
all? Don't they all?
so cute.
Oh,
Unfortunately, Q and Billy never met. Q met my previous dog Ellington, but he passed away as well.
sorry.
So Q, yeah. So obviously, when we started making the film, she didn't launch right into why she disappeared and all these very sort of intimate, heavy, personal stories she tells in the film. The beginning, she was mostly talking about her music and London, New York, and then it sort of reached a point where, well, she said, well, now I've told you everything there is about, Q Lazarus, and, I don't know if you really want to hear the other stuff. And I said, at this point, I'm making a film about Diane Lucky. Like, it's clear Q Lazarus was just one chapter in your life. And she told me all these things that she'd never told anybody. So when her family watched the film for the first time, they said, most of this we're just finding out ourselves, and they were quite shocked by some of it. Obviously, her husband Bob knew the most, and yeah, it was a very, I think it's an unusual film in that sense because not only was she telling me these stories, it was the first time she was telling these stories. So it was very emotional for her, and but also, and this is a testament to Q herself, that she just made herself completely vulnerable. And, she was never a celebrity because she wasn't a household name. She never got a record deal, until now. And, unfortunately, never got the appreciation and the attention she deserved. But she, in terms of being a public figure, like you see documentaries about public figures, they're very concerned about their image. They don't want to show weakness. They don't want to tell stories that aren't flattering, that make them seem weak, that make them seem, you know, that they were suffering. And with her, it's the opposite. She completely just reveals everything, and I think that's what audiences fall in love with her. People don't feel judgmental. They don't feel like, critical of her. On the contrary, she shows her humanity and audiences connect with that. And, I think most celebrities don't realize that if you're humble, people will like you a lot more than if you're like, oh, I'm over here and you're over there. Um, and, obviously the stories themselves were incredibly moving and dramatic, and she was an incredible storyteller and also so funny. Even when she's talking about really heavy things, she finds a way of injecting humor into them.
Yeah, her spirit and her energy definitely shines through the screen. You can feel it.
Mhm.
And the whole time, especially in the beginning when you're getting into her story and why she sort of never made it big, I was just like, this is why we can't have nice things. We don't deserve it. We're assholes.
Mhm.
This film is just like she recorded that song in one take. Was it like, imagine all
Yeah.
of the music and all of the concerts and the sort of movement she could have made within the music industry. But so this film is, it's a cautionary tale for musicians, obviously, any creative sort of coming up in any industry, but also for all of us just as humans to
Mhm.
really check our prejudices, because we all have them, whether they're conscious or subconscious, but we all have them and we all participate in what happens in these
Mhm.
industries. So can you
Yeah.
can you speak to that?
Yeah. I mean, certainly it shows what can happen to creative people when they're not given, opportunities and an outlet for their work and their voice. Certainly, race came into play a lot for her in her life. It's not, it's not the forefront of the film as something that's being discussed over and over again, but it's there the whole time. And, it started with her musical career, or the lack of it, where she was working in genres that are considered more white, traditionally, like new wave and metal and, even rock and roll at the time, which is ridiculous because rock and roll was invented by African Americans.
Mhm.
But this was the 80s, it was a very materialistic time. And she was also a large woman. She was 6 feet tall and she was, large bones. And, she didn't look like Whitney Houston. She wasn't singing pop or R&B. She wasn't, and this is something that's mentioned a lot in the film, by her bandmates, by her manager, by herself. Like, she was just constantly told that they couldn't market her, they couldn't categorize her. And then certainly later on, the legal system, the medical system, again, like her race just kept, presenting these obstacles in her path that wouldn't have been there for a white man, certainly.
Can you talk about speaking with her son and
Hmm.
also her husband and
Hmm.
just those moments of I could just feel her son's love for his mom and
Hmm.
also really coming to understand what her life was. So can you talk
Hmm.
about coming getting to that point with them?
Yeah, I mean, as we've seen the film, Bob was the one who was there when she sort of was at her lowest and, stuck through with her through everything, when she was away for many years and then when James was 6 and they all started living together again in Staten Island. She didn't really talk to James about her past at all. She didn't really talk to Bob about her past when she first met him. There's some funny exchanges between them where he says, "Oh, like, you told me you were a nurse," and then. But yeah, they were an incredibly close family, and um, Bob is now, he's in a nursing home here in Brooklyn near me, which I helped find for him because she took care of him. And James is now running the estate, still trying to sort of get rights and royalties for Goodbye Horses in particular. The other sub music's out on, the soundtrack, Sacred Bones Records, and she's finally getting her family is getting royalties for the other music, but Goodbye Horses is still an ongoing struggle. So James is still working on that, just he's sort of taken on now this responsibility of, trying to get justice for his mother in terms of that, her music. And they were all, very supportive of the film, and I'm still in very close contact with both of them, like on a weekly basis. And yeah, I mean, as happens with documentaries, like you get very involved in often in, your subjects' lives and, you know, and the film changes their lives as well, you know,
Mm.
just by drawing attention, giving them a voice, drawing attention to whatever their situation is. So with Q, the film has become, what started off as, okay, this amazing woman has entrusted me with her story, and, I'm so blessed to be able to tell it and help her tell it and, help her. There's going to be a soundtrack. She's going to get her first record deal. And, it was meant to be sort of the vessel for her to sort of finally have the career that she always deserved, and come out of, the 25 years of being off the grid. And, when she passed away, it turned into something else, which is a huge responsibility to sort of make sure that her remarkable spirit is kind of shared with the world through the film, that I showed all these different sides of her. And because so much of her legacy is now based on this movie, she won't do any more interviews, she won't make any more music, no one will film her. Nobody did film her as, these, later in her life or telling these stories. So it's a big responsibility. And, one that I pretty much said, okay, like what I need to do is let, for them as much as possible, let her tell her own story, you know.
You've
Um,
definitely done her justice.
oh,
Like I said
thank you.
at the top of the interview, you helped her reclaim her redemption story and
Mhm.
release everything that she had inside of her to share. So it's just a priceless gift for Bob and James and us as viewers. But I do want to let the viewers know that when you watch this film, there's also a lot of really fun 80s footage. And I mean, there's some black and white footage of Q from the 80s. Like
Mhm.
when you found out that you had this archival of her, can you talk about the excitement of that? Because you're hoping you don't have to recreate everything or dig through
Mhm.
real archival footage that could take years in and of itself, right? But that was just a gold mine of footage of her in the 80s.
Well, so a lot of that is outtakes from the Goodbye Horses video,
Mm.
that the director Leslie Mantel shot on 16 millimeter. And when I tracked him down to film him and have them sort of reunite and talk about making the video, he didn't actually have the video itself anymore. He just had these outtakes. And Q was the one who had wound up with the, I think it was Beta SP or U-matic, one of these sort of older formats. She was the one who had the tape. So she gave him the tape. She's like, here's your video, and he said, use whatever you want of the outtakes. So I digitized everything because they were still on film. And that really wound up being the footage that I had of her in New York in the 80s. It was invaluable.
Mhm.
And then I was able to find some stuff of her in London in the 90s. And luckily, all of her photographs and flyers, her sister Abby had kept safe during, what I call the dark days, which was very great, and her music. Abby had kept all her music safe. So while we were filming, Q handed me like a sack of like 30, 40 tapes and DATs, and I digitized everything and helped her copyright everything in her name because she didn't have anything copywritten. And um, and then there was one day that we filmed, which might have been my favorite day of filming, where we just sat and listened to all of this music, and she hadn't listened to it in 25 years. And she was crying and laughing and singing along and sort of telling me what each song was about, what it was called, who she wrote it with. And it was really watching her realize how talented she was, was very special because I feel like that's the moment where she really realized, like, wait a minute, I'm talented, like I had convinced myself that I wasn't because nobody paid attention to me. I was rejected year after year after year to the point where I just had to bury it because it was too painful. And it was sort of like this reawakening, her her desire to sing and create and, her yeah, her confidence, in her work. So yeah, it was very special. It's certainly life-changing, I think, for both of us, like making this project. Yeah.
Before we wrap, what do
Mhm.
you think Diane would want us to walk away with after we see this film?
Um, I mean, I think, she lived through many dramatic things and she wasn't jaded at all. That was one thing that really struck me about her. She was still joyous and, generous and, had a love of life. I think sort of the seeds of like the advice and seeds of pearls of wisdom that she gives to James when he's about to leave to Alaska, which is like, you can't hold on to shit. You got to let shit go. You can't hold on to things, I would have been dead a long time ago if, just learn what wars to fight and what battles to fight and what wars to, choose. And, just that attitude towards life of like really focus on the things that matter because, not on the little annoying things that there's going to be many every day. And also to be open to the universe, to the things, the people and the things that the universe brings to you. Because, if she and I hadn't started talking when I got in her car, if her and Jonathan Demme hadn't started talking when I got in her car, when he got in her car, we wouldn't have any of this music. None of this music would be known. None of the film wouldn't exist. And, and finally also like don't judge people that you don't know. Like you don't know whether it's the driver of a taxi, whether it's an unhoused person on the street, anyone that you cross paths with, you have no idea what their story is. You have no idea what they've been through. You know, they could be this amazing, talented person like you. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for speaking with us. I'm going to be playing this song. It's all going to be on my jukebox rotation now every time we go to a bar. And
Okay.
I'm the jukebox DJ. The film is Goodbye Horses, The Many Lives of Q Lazzarus. She was magical. Thank you for bringing this to film and just shooting with her and bringing her story back to life, like her name. Good luck with this film, and hopefully we'll see you back again soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us on today's show. You can find more information about this episode in our show notes.
If you're missing us, you can visit us at bitchtalkpodcast.com to sign up for our newsletter and buy us a cup of coffee.
Did you know we're also on the radio? You can find us at bff.fm.
And lastly, rate and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. All the cool bitches are doing it.